You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, here we go, folks. It's Monday evening. Welcome to my program. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on Odyssey Radio Network. That is ODYSY1.com for all of those of you who have never been there before. And those of you who are listening via the network, go on over, check out the schedule, see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. You can fill your computer airwaves or your radio 24/7 with the lineup over at Odyssey Radio. And that's ODYSY1.com. And you can listen to this broadcast. If you're only listening to the audio right now, you can come on over to my YouTube channel and listen and watch in video this broadcast at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. That's me. And the best part of going over to the video channel on YouTube is the live chat room, where you're going to meet the other Intrepids who like to follow this show, listen to this show, and they join up every night and over in that chat room, share their ideas. You can share yours too. So come on over and join the unofficial club. Just sign in and you're there. So welcome to the show tonight. I want to make a quick announcement for those of you who know me, those of you who've been followers for a while. I've got my wife, Rainey, my lovely wife, Rainey, her 40th birthday is coming up. And I put a little post over on my Facebook, and I said, in lieu of being able to have the surprise party I wanted to throw for her, due to the plague and our shut-in status, I would like you to go over there and post a little song. Record a song and post it. Sing it. I want you to sing it. I want you to serenade my wife. It can be good. It can be bad. You can be a professional musician. You can carry a tune so badly you couldn't carry it to the trash can. But get on there and record a little something and throw it up there for Rainey. And I think that'll be fun to see how those accumulate over the next couple of weeks. So her birthday is not till the end of the month, the 29th, but I thought it'd be good to put that out there and have everybody start throwing in what they want to. So if you have any questions about that, give me a shout. Pretty easy going stuff, though. Just do a quick song. I did one for her this morning, and I have to post it. It's something as simple as you look into your camera and you say, L is for the way you look at me. O is for the only one I see. V is very, very extraordinary. E is even more than anyone that you adore. Now love is all that I can give to you. Love is only just a game for two. Two in love can make it. Here's my heart, now please don't break it. Love was made for me and you. So something like that. Just rattle it off the top of your head and do it. Doesn't have to be good. Doesn't have to sound pretty. It just has to be fun. So I invite you to come over and do that over my Facebook thread. And that's all I got there for that. So let's move into what I want to talk to you about tonight. And talk with you, talk to you. Since we're not having a conversation, I'm talking to you, but at least I'm not talking at you. Now, you know how for a long time we did a lot of talk about religion. Let's put it in that category, spirituality. And I would say it was about religion because we were studying religion and looking at maybe the what you might call the basics of early Christianity, and how early Christianity doesn't look much like what Christianity looks like today. Now, of course, anything left to itself to evolve over 2,000 years is going to be different from the beginning. So I wanted to get, at the time we were doing this, into the Gnostic teachings, the mysteries, and all of that, and how the Western Orthodox Christian church, the literalist church, came into being. And so I kind of want to, I have a hankering to talk about a little bit of the occult mysteries. Now, people have a almost a bad feeling that comes up when they hear the word occult if they've never defined it. Occult just simply means the hidden mysteries, hidden knowledge. And I'm currently in the midst of writing a book that I put in the category of occult detectives. And it's the Badcock and Byrne mysteries. And the 10 Breaths of Ra. It takes place in Egypt in the 20s. And it's this team that are doing a investigation work, research, mystery. And it's in that occult category, the hidden knowledge. So hidden knowledge, it's the things that aren't uncovered to us, the occult. It's not Satanism or anything like that. So I wanted to talk tonight about, under the category of occult mysteries, I want to talk about the mystery language. And it's kind of this investigation of the universal language of occult science and some of the keys to it. And the aim of this is really threefold. First, I want to show that every theology, from the earliest and oldest known down to the latest, has sprung not only from a common source of philosophical beliefs or the revelation of a particular message or a particular teacher, but from one, once universal, esoteric science. All religion, all philosophy has sprouted from this. Secondly, that this science was embodied in and communicated by means of the mystery language. Do you know what that is? Have you ever heard of that? Thirdly, to consider the keys to this language, which is essentially mythological, symbolical, and allegorical, not literal, allegorical, and that opens the door to the ancient wisdom. And so if you know little or nothing about ancient wisdom, and even if you do, the short explanation is something that we need to look into. And that's why I'm doing this. And so maybe right now, maybe a good thing to do is to look at this short explanation. What is ancient wisdom? And ancient wisdom is really, if you're seeking answers to greater questions and the mysteries of life, and we all have these questions. Do you wonder who you truly are, what the purpose of life on earth is, what the occult and magic and religion and philosophy really are and what they really mean? Then this is kind of a quick, short look at it. A tremendous amount of misinformation and fantasy is now to be found on the internet and in books and a wide variety of occult, religious, magical, and mystical subjects. And some of the authors of this tide of fallacies mean well, but many more don't. And it all spells kind of dire trouble for those who are genuinely in search of facts and not fantasy or half-truths about this. One of the reasons that I'm doing this series, that I've done this series in the past, and I'm launching into this now, is this deluge of half-truths, speculations, conspiracy theories, and misconceptions about ancient wisdom. And the fact of the matter is that even the most elevated occult teachings can be misinterpreted and distorted to suit almost any agenda. And the same could be said for magic, or magic with a CK at the end, as many people insist on spelling it nowadays, which is even less understood nowadays than occultism. So if we honestly examine the beliefs and the practices of those who call themselves magicians or occultists or mystery Gnostics, all of that stuff, we find that they're mostly concerned with themselves and not others. They don't have any wish to improve the lives of their fellow human beings or worldly conditions. Their aspirations are glued to the material plane and their personal needs and their desires. And it gets to be a really selfish sort of non-spiritual spirituality, if you follow what I mean there. They don't really mind if other people suffer so long as they're comfortable. And many will tell you that they only have one life to live and are going to make the most of it by employing so-called magic to acquire as much worldly wealth and personal power as circumstances allow them to do. And so in short, modern magic is often nothing more than self-indulgent mental masturbation at best, and it's pure sorcery at the worst. So it's these distortions and these misinterpretations of the great occult truths which do the most harm and lead to so much confusion, disillusion, suffering among seekers after occult knowledge, myself included. I am not a practitioner of magic, although I possess that, as we all do. It's understanding its use and what it does for us and others around us. So this is really a learning curve for me as well. And I don't want you to look at me or listen to me and say, oh, this is another guy with white hair and a white goatee and mustache that is out there teaching occult stuff. I don't want to get that kind of reputation. I'm a normal guy, all right? I'm a guy that grew up, I went to Bible college and seminary, as many of you know. I was in the church for a long time. I'm married. I've been married and divorced. I got 6 kids. I'm currently married to my wife, Rainey. We've got 3 little ones, 10, 8, and 5. I struggle with being a good dad sometimes. My wife and I argue like normal people. We love each other like normal people. We struggle to make ends meet some months. We're normal people. I'm a normal guy. But, and maybe some of you would think I'm not. But I am going through this material for myself as well as everybody else because I'm curious about it. I want to know. I want to know answers to things. And so, there's no glamour here. There's no thrills. There's no fantasy. There's no magical spells, rituals, or grimoires. People sometimes shudder, as I mentioned, at the word occult, and they return to the safety of religious orthodoxy, literalist orthodoxy. And that's their prerogative, and you know what? I wish everybody well who does that. Your chosen spirituality is yours. Just know what the hell you believe. But the few who do stay and want to listen to this stuff and dig into this a little bit and try to understand what it is, even if you don't practice anything, but you want to know things, I think this is a place to start. And there are some, I wanted to start talking about the language, the mystery language. And I'm getting more into an explanation here of the occult. So let's take this where it goes. We may take all week with this. So I hope, sit back, nestle back, and enjoy this. The occult is not what most people think it is. Not one person in 10 million or one occultist in 1,000 has the slightest idea of what the occult really is. Think about that for a second. Challenge yourself for a moment and say, how would I define occult if I heard the word? What's my reaction to seeing the word? What does it mean? I remember in the 80s and the 90s seeing occult murders took place, and things like that. And so occult was always associated with the heinous, with the satanic, with Halloween and a more washed out version of it. But do you really know what it is? You might think this is an exaggeration, but I assure you it isn't. And the first misconception that we have, and that I want to hopefully help correct here, is that the occult is evil. That's a misconception. Occult equates to evil. It's not. Neither is it anti-religion, nor has it anything to do with black magic, dark sorcery, or evil witchcraft. None of those things apply to the word occult. And I'm not going to promote such a subject in anything that I talk to you about here, because that's just a misconception. This is where we're clearing away the fog here a little bit, is what my intent here is. And I think I would be promoting the teachings of wise philosophers, of spiritual masters of past and present, and none of which can really conflict in any way with the highest ideals of any religion when you look at them from outside the box. And more than one religious visitor to this topic could be shocked to find that there are all kinds of references to God, to hidden wisdom in the Bible, within the occult. And so that might start dispelling some of the initial misconceptions that people have. And so this isn't surprising, considering that the word occult is nowadays mostly associated with all that's evil. But all the word really means, folks, is hidden. As I said at the beginning of this, the onset, hidden. It's the hidden knowledge. It's in this correct sense that the word is used by doctors to describe blood that's not visibly apparent. The same definition applies to the occult mysteries. That's knowledge and truth which is not visibly apparent. And that's the only sense in which I use the word, and how we're going to define the word, and as it should be defined rightfully. And a lot of people ask why such knowledge and truth has been hidden from the world. And the simple answer is to prevent it being misused. There's never been a single teacher of the eternal verities who did not withhold the hidden or the occult mysteries from the multitude. Remember when I talked about Gnostic mysticism? There was the exoteric, which was kind of the truthful cover story of, hey, this is what we're about. But then you got the esoteric and the inner knowledge once you came in closer to examine. Jesus, for instance, tells... Now, there you go. Now Rocky can say my show. That's all I do is talk about Jesus. Jesus, for instance, tells his chosen disciples that unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God. But to other people, it's just wrapped up in parables. So those who come close and want to know and want to dig, they're the ones to whom mysteries are revealed. And I'm not saying I've even attained this yet. I'm saying I'm still digging. And I'm learning this stuff along with you. So enjoy that as we go through this process. By the way, that little passage was from Luke chapter 8, verse 10. And you find Paul the Apostle in the New Testament saying the same in his letter to the Corinthians. He said, we speak wisdom among them that are perfect. Perfect in this sense was Paul uses to refer to the perfecti. It's a title that was given to the initiated in the Greek mysteries, of which Paul himself was an initiate. So Pythagoras uses the same word to describe those whom he initiated into his academy. Pythagoras said, whither are you carried, O men, drunken with drinking up the strong wine of ignorance? And by that was Hermes Trismegistus, the divine Pymander. So, are you drunk? You're drunk with ignorance, is what he says. So, you might ask if occult knowledge and truth has been hidden from the multitude. if that's so, why should we even make it public? And that's a really good question. The answer is because the time is right to reveal some of it. As we're digging to get to know something, to understand a thing, I think our world is ready for it. You have to emphasize some here because the higher mysteries can only be imparted to those who can be trusted to not misuse or reveal it to those that shouldn't hear it. And so there's all kinds of reasons for this that I'm digging into this. It's like wanting to know about, say, the Masons, their hidden stuff. What would you do if you found out hidden stuff about the Masons? Well, read that. I want to know something. And so the more simple truths of the occult science, such as reincarnation, evolution, should never have been hidden from anybody. This has done incalculable harm to humanity. And now you might not believe in those things, but understanding them when you converse about them or refer to them or talk about them is an important thing. People grope in the dark, and they make the most appalling errors with the best of intentions. There's never been a time when these truths were more vitally needed than I think nowadays. A time when fear and menace stalk the world. There's hunger, there's disease that afflict millions. Wars strew the smiling earth with death, and the hearts of God's lost children cry out for answers. And answers neither church nor state, least of all material science, can provide. There are veils that science simply cannot pierce. Sorry to my scientist friends. There's more to life and the universe than science. So this is the purpose of what I'm doing here. And the question is, are you willing to and capable of recognizing and receiving it? It's going to be heard by the dull and the brilliant, the pure and the impure, the stupid and the wise, and those in between such conditions of mind. We all need to know what we're qualified to take of the shining pearls of wisdom that are out there. And so ancient wisdom itself, which is what I kind of diverted for, you have to ask the question, what is ancient wisdom? And where is it to be found? We're often asked by... I have all kinds of people that ask me, okay, what is ancient wisdom? Because I mention it and I talk about it. And sometimes I have to say, I don't know. I don't fully know. I don't fully understand. So I have to educate myself. What is ancient wisdom? Where is it found? And many of us ask whether there's any truth in the teachings of those who purport to receive knowledge from, I don't know, the other side, interdimensional beings, ETs, things like that, angels, cosmic masters, celestial beings, celestial, and I use all these terms like when I wrote about the Nephilim, how the Watchers were celestial beings and intermingled with human women. Are there such things? And these might seem like really elementary questions. And, there's even experienced occultists and mystics who ask these same questions. But for those confused by the sheer amount of New Age teachings that are out there, preparations for planetary, personal ascension, apocalypses, doomsday predictions, you find them all over the internet and in books everywhere. Such questions deserve clear and simple answers. And this is what I'm after here. And this is what I hope that we can find as we work to uncover all this stuff together. So where can you find ancient wisdom? Can you find it in a grain of sand? Or a flower? If you know how to look, you can. But it's far too simplistic is what I'm finding, and unglamorous for the many seeking the thrills and the fantasy to fill the spiritual vacuum in their lives. which is what a lot of people do when they start looking at this stuff. They want to fill a gap that's not filled. They're missing something, and they want to try everything they can to fill that. And so that's what we're going to try to do here now. Let's look into this. We got to go out to break. We'll pick this up right where we left off. See you in 2 minutes. All right, gang, we're back from that break. Thanks for sitting through it. Welcome back to my show. This is Scotty Roberts, and you're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. You can also come over and watch the video simulcast along with the live chat room with the other Intrepids over on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And let's jump right back into this thing of trying to define a little bit for the basics what ancient wisdom is. There was a poem that said, "To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. Flower in the crannied wall, I pluck you out of the crannies. I hold you here, root and all, in my hand. Little flower, but if I could understand what you are, root and all in all, I should know what God and man is." Now, this is how the mind of inspired poets recognize truth. Intuitively, in a flash of interior illumination. You ever wonder about that? The artist, how he can see this in a flash. He sees things. I do. Me as an artist, as a designer, as an illustrator. If somebody throws a concept out to me, I want to see this, and I go, I'll get a whole flash of inspiration, and I'll see a finished thing in my head that now I have to work to try to achieve. And you know, it's this flash of interior illumination, as even Tennyson admits when he wrote that, may not always fully understand all of the sublime revelations that he receives in this way. You can read more about occult truths by picking up books. You can go on the internet and look at the subject. You can look at the magic of poetry. You can look at Prometheus Unveiled. You can look at the poems of Shakespeare, Keats, Yeats, Milton, Spencer, Dante. You can even look at, Prometheus Unveiled is an analysis of Shelley's great lyrical drama Prometheus Unbound, which was, we know better as, Frankenstein. So don't be misled by the word ancient when we talk about ancient wisdom here. There's nothing outdated in ancient wisdom. the great spiritual truths, the universal laws that govern the material and the spiritual worlds cannot change. It might be ancient, but it's ancient in its understanding, and it's current in its ancientness, to kind of use a little paradox on words. If they did, they wouldn't be laws if they could change. But speculations and theories is all we'd have left if they weren't ancient laws, this ancient wisdom. And so this has to be evident to all thinking people. What does change is our perception of these truths. And laws, as we learn to distinguish the false from the true. But this can only come about gradually. The great problem for, like me, the inexperienced, the learning, the untrained seeker, is that the ancient wisdom, as Blavatsky once said, is hidden under glyph and symbol, and hitherto left unnoticed because of this veil. And without the keys of allegory, mythology, and symbolism, to name but a few of the sacred keys of the sublime mysteries, the ancient wisdom remains a closed book for almost everyone. And so to learn these keys and how to use them to discover the ancient wisdom is the work of a lifetime. Don't let anybody let you know or believe that it's any different, that you can learn this stuff in a course in a semester or a couple of weeks or a few months. As you can tell by me, even sometimes I stammer through this stuff because I'm still learning it. I'm still trying to delve the depths of it. And this is the first and most difficult step for anyone who wants to say they want to learn the truth. There are no cliff notes or idiot's guides or, ancient mysteries for dummies. That doesn't exist. They have to be sought in the many books that exist out there, the many teachings that exist out there, the many writings that exist out there, in all the symbolism, allegory, mythology, philosophy, and science. So does this kind of put you off from wanting to learn about these things? I know you could listen to this show and I'll give you some gleanings, but if you really want to know this stuff, you really have to dig in. And then you have to consider this. Even if you learn just a few of the keys and you're only able to partially apply them, you're going to be amazed at what you discover in the Bible and many other sacred texts that maybe you've never imagined that they contain. And in time, you're going to find that many other things that puzzled you will suddenly become clear as these aha moments, like for me. They increase, and they will if you work hard at your studies personally to get to know this stuff, to understand the world of wonders for yourself, the undreamed of stuff. And not only will this be wonderful, but it's going to be uplifting, it's going to be enjoyable. For what greater joy can any of us have than to learn the things that truly are? To be aware, to be awake, to be in the now. Hermes tells us, seek one that may lead you by the hand and conduct you to the door of truth and knowledge, where the clear light is that pure from darkness, where there is not one drunken, but all are sober, and in their heart look up to him, whose pleasure it is to be seen, for he cannot be heard with ears, nor seen with eyes, nor experienced in words, but only in mind and heart can he be known. Now, you might ask at this point, why so many people who consider themselves spiritual, who say that they long for the truth, are really so very reluctant to study ancient wisdom and to learn the keys to it? Why would you say you want to know? Unless you don't really want to know, you want to regurgitate that which you've been taught. So why do so many listen to pretenders to truth and imposters of wisdom who channel messages purporting to come from angel guides and extraterrestrials and yet they express no interest in studying the sacred literature of the world, where they can find the sublime truths of life. And so why, too, do people who are otherwise intelligent and sensible blindly swallow the nonsense broadcast on YouTube and different podcasts and all the junk that's out there? Even going to websites and saying, I think I know things now because I've read this, by self-appointed teachers who, without bothering to investigate the source of such teachings, or at the very least question the accuracy of their pronouncements. There's some out there that would pronounce things just because they are who they are. I've got 100,000 followers, and you should listen to what I say, because I study. Well, that's not the criteria for being able to learn from somebody. Learning from somebody, I think the best teachers are those who don't know everything. And they're saying, let's learn this together. So the answers to all these questions can be slated in one word. And that word is, well, I wear it on a lot of my sweatshirts every day. Think, or thinking, if you will. That's the answer. Think. And so very many seekers after the truth have an aversion to thinking for and by themselves, mistaking the psychic for the spiritual and fantasies for fact. They're all too willing to accept any statement, no matter how implausible or fantastic, provided it's made with sufficient gravitas and authority. It's like even Paul said in the New Testament. He says, there's going to be times when we all want teachers and we listen to them just because it tickles our ears. So theoretically, most of us admit the duty of thorough and open-minded inquiry into the truth of any important statement before believing it. And in practice, no duty is more universally neglected. And so this is especially true in regard to the ancient wisdom, which, as I kind of said earlier, although it's to be found scattered throughout thousands of books, it's largely ignored because humanity has lost the keys to interpret and understand ancient wisdom. So let's consider some examples of the ancient wisdom and show what I mean here. In Genesis, I gotta move some of my windows around here because I gotta keep track of my clock. Otherwise, I'm gonna go way over time here because I got weeks worth of material stacked up in front of me that we're gonna do. So here's some examples of ancient wisdom. In Genesis, we might read that, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now, unless we know or have been taught what's hidden behind the words heaven and earth, darkness and deep, this passage makes very little sense to the average seeker or mystic. Or they just accept it at face value. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, it was dark and blah, blah, blah. God created stuff out of nothing. So science simply laughs at such statements. And quite rightly, too, for their real meaning is cloaked in allegory and symbolism and mythology. Look at another example, this time from the divine Pymander of Hermes. Book 3, he says, "For there were in the chaos an infinite darkness in the abyss or bottomless depth and water, a subtle spirit intelligible in power, and there went out the holy light. And the elements were coagulated from the sand out of the moist substance." So without an understanding of what the author means by chaos, water, light, etc., this passage makes very little sense to people. So let's say at once that the water referred to isn't H2O, drinking water, but rather it's a symbol for the fluid state of matter before the infusion of life into it. The same applies to chaos, light, sand, moist substance. None of these terms should be taken literally. Each is a veil concealing the higher hidden ancient wisdom. And now this might be an example that's more familiar to many readers. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In him was life, and life was the light of men. And the light shineth in the darkness, and darkness comprehended it not. That's the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. And in these few lines lie concealed the mysteries of creation and evolution. But where's the theologian who can explain it? There are some. H.P. Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, The Golden Star, those writings both reviewed on this extensively over the years. We can find some of the keys on this that unlock the meaning of enigmatical verses like this. But as we said earlier, these keys have to be learned before they can be used. And that takes time and a great deal of study. There was a writer and occultist, John Temple, who employed some of those keys to great advantage in his articles on the search for the truth in the Bible and other sacred writings which contain the ancient wisdom. All of his articles are well worth studying, not merely for the occult truths that they reveal, but also to show the ways in which sacred texts should be read if we wish to extract their hidden meanings. So look up a guy named John Temple, and you can start doing some personal reading on your own on this, to start revealing some things. And ancient wisdom can be found everywhere. It lies literally in everything that's around us in plain sight. If we'll only learn how to look with a seeking eye, an open mind, and an understanding heart. And we've also seen what it is. It's namely the repository of the sublime truths of life. It doesn't belong to any one race, any one religion, any one spirituality, or any one time. Nor does it have anything to do with religion at all. This is commonly misunderstood. The religions of the world have been borrowed from ancient wisdom, Christianity included, and without adding anything of value to it in most cases. So, indeed, we could go further and say that great religions of both East and West have largely distorted what they've taken from ancient wisdom, substituting dogma for truth, an empty ritual for true piety, empty ritual for true devotion. And yet what remains, however fragmentary and incomplete, is more sufficient to guide the feet of the sincere seeker to the fount of all wisdom, of all knowledge, of all truth, which, in my understanding, is God. And so, that's a little bit about ancient wisdom. It might seem as abstract to you as it does to me at times. I want firm, I want knowledge, I want truth, but I need to understand the keys. And now, this is from Hermes as well, the Virgin of the World. He said, "He who instructs himself concerning the universe, its laws and its principles, its beginnings and its end, gives thanks for all things to the Creator, as to a gracious Father, a good protector, and a faithful teacher." So there's a little bit about ancient mysteries, and we only got a few minutes left here. We got about 10 minutes left to this program. And I want to jump back into this whole thing of ancient, or of mystery language, the language of mystery. Or the mystery language, however you want to say it. Now, we've talked about ancient wisdom. Let me clarify what I mean about mystery language. We're used to thinking of ordinary human languages as consisting of either speech or writing, and the former being language proper, and the latter a visual representation of it when you write it down. Now, speech can be either literal, by which we say exactly what we mean, such as sky is blue, or figurative and symbolic, by which we mean something other than the literal, such as I'm feeling blue. That's figurative. So the figurative use of the word blue in this context is an allegory for sadness. which has nothing whatever to do with the literal meaning of the word blue as a color. So the parables of the Gospels, ancient myths, and many fairy tales all employ these similar types of allegories. And we've talked about this many times in the past on this show. The next thing we have to consider is that writing consists of either characters that represent the sound of a language, called phonograms, or characters that represent the words of a language, called ideographs. And each phonogram may stand for an individual sound that comes out of your mouth, as the letters of our own English alphabet do. Or it may stand for a whole syllable, as the characters in some Japanese forms of writing do. And an ideograph or an ideograph stands for a whole word. It represents its meaning rather than its sound. Egyptian hieroglyphics consist entirely of ideographs, which might stand for a single letter or a whole word. And it conveys a whole body of meaning in one sign. An example of the former is a hieroglyph for the Egyptian letter A, which consists of an upright reed, whereas the hieroglyph for the sun is a circle with a dot in the center, might stand for the sun god Ra, or the word Haru, meaning day as well as light, brightness, etc. We even use a few ideographs in English, such as the meanings of dollar signs. It's not really language, it's an ideograph. The at symbol, meaning at. Those are ideographs, like hieroglyphics. I think of one hieroglyphic in particular. I even envision it in my mind. I was reading on and we got to talk about this sometime, the El Arish stone, which has an old story on it that many people think relate to Moses and the Exodus and the pharaohs around it. And it talks about how the people crossed through split waters, so the parting of the Red Sea. And so the symbol for that in hieroglyphs was a knife and a bit of a diagonal and a squiggly line for water on top of another squiggly line for water. So it was, rather than just water, one line, it was the waters, or the sea, an expanse of water, cutting an expanse, the divided waters. It's an ideogram in hieroglyph. So, now ordinary language employs allegory and symbols to convey these particular meanings. It also employs pictographs or pictures, such as our familiar traffic lights and road signs. And we also have the language of flowers, in which individual plants such as roses, pansies, forget-me-nots, daisies, each convey a specific symbolic meaning, to which we have to add the language of mathematics and music too. And so it's all these languages in particular that bring us close to the mystery language. And for all three, employ symbolism and allegory to communicate ideas and facts, but, and this is the important part of this, only to those who have been instructed in their use. But no one but an accomplished, fully trained mathematician can make heads or tails of complex mathematical equations, and the same is true of someone who knows nothing of the language of flowers and attempts to interpret what it means to be given roses, or lilies, or geraniums, or aconite in a floral bouquet. So, now we'll come back to this. This is an important point, but we'll get back to that kind of later when we discuss the keys to mystery language. But the elements of mystery language consist of many different things. There's all sorts of different elements here, of which signs of all kinds are one of the most important. And as I've already said, all of us are familiar with things like traffic signs and those used in airports and public buildings to convey information. And such signs are universal. You don't even need to know how to read to know what those signs mean. And they don't depend on words or any particular language to understand them. And we instantly translate them into whatever language we speak, whether we're English, French, Indian, Chinese, whatever, or under any nationality under the sun. And this brings us even closer to the mystery language, which also consists of symbols. And these can take many different forms, from simple signs such as a cross or a circle, hands in the shape of a heart. And it's used by many occult orders, and among the Freemasons, you see all kinds of hand symbols and signs. And though it's only fair to point out that neither the cross nor the circle are really simple, as I'll discuss later, some of these things have many much deeper hidden meanings than you might be aware, such as Leo, the lion, the plow, or the Big Dipper, Taurus, the bull, and so on. These are the night sky constellations. The astronomical constellations are examples of complex symbols. Other elements of the mystery language is allegory. And there's several examples of this in all the different things that we've talked about, different stories and things all through the ensuing months that we've been doing these kinds of topics. Mythology is yet another mode of communicating certain facts, laws, truths in a symbolic manner, of which much analysis of the interpretations of the stories of Ishtar, for example. Most of you at least know some of the better-known Greek myths, such as Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, whereupon the wings that he built with his father, made out of wax, melted and he fell to the earth and was drowned in the ocean. Superficially, this myth is a moral tale warning of the dangers of pride and complacency. But if we dig a little deeper, it's really about balancing the needs and desires of the lower and higher selves, and the one which seeks to free itself from the matter, and the other to wallow in the mud of earthly pleasures. And so the myth of Phaethon, which word means shining one, you can almost think of the Nephilim or the Watchers when you think of this, the offspring, the shining ones, the divine council. The shining ones, it deals with a similar theme. Given the task of driving the chariot of the sun, Phaethon was unable to control his horses, and seeing the grave danger this posed to the earth, Zeus destroyed the chariot with a thunderbolt and killed Phaethon in the process. So we each possess such a chariot in the form of our own body, of which our five senses are the horses, and few are able to control them, which lead to disasters of all kind. You could probably think right now of things that you've done or things you've seen. Our five senses are the horses, and we're unable to control them. But there's more in this myth than a moral injunction to self-control. In Plato's Timaeus, Critias tells the story of Atlantis, as recounted to Solon by the Egyptian priest, who prefaced the story by saying, "There had been and will be again many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes. The greatest had been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. There's a story that even you," and he's speaking to the Greeks, "have preserved, that once upon a time, Phaethon, the son of Helios, having yoked the steeds in his father's chariot because he was not able to drive them in the path of his father, burnt up all that was upon the earth, and was himself destroyed by a thunderbolt." Now this was the form of a myth, but really signifies a declination of the bodies moving in the heavens around the earth, and a great conflagration of things upon the earth, which recurs after long intervals. So here we have an example of an astronomical truths that are being concealed in the form of myth. And so we've now learned three important things. First, the mystery language is one of symbols, not literal meaning of words. Secondly, that it's universal and it can be understood by anyone who possesses keys to it. And third, that these keys unlock the hidden meaning of myths, allegories, and sacred writings of all kinds and times. So there's a lot more that we're going to look into on this stuff, folks. And we're out of time tonight. So stay tuned tomorrow. I'm trying to dig into this a little bit more. Thanks for being here. See you in 23 hours.